Let's go back to our breaking news story this hour. The United States has reportedly imposed sanctions on several Russian companies. This is for supposedly violating a law that bans arms sales to Iran, North Korea and Syria. 8 Russian firms are believed to be on the list. Russian news agencies say that this has been confirmed to them by the US State Department, but so far there has been no official statement coming out of Washington. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has expressed surprise over the move.
The decision of the U.S. administration is causing confusion and disappointment. This new round of sanctions will not cause us any serious problems, but the Americans have not even given us any reasons. Washington is again taking its lead from those who have made the consistent destruction of Russian-American cooperation their main goal. These people have long been looking for enemies in places where they really do not exist. Such an approach is clearly not in the interests of U.S. security.
Let's bring in a guest for some reaction now. I can speak to Graig Robers, who was a former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury and also former editor of the Wall Street Journal. Very good to speak to you. What, first of all, do you make of these latest sanctions, and how does it fit in with the new administration and their promises of doing their best to cooperate with Russia?
It's part of the propaganda to paint a negative picture of Russia and also China, because they're included in the sanctions. Really what's going on in the United States, the battle between President Trump and the military security complex, is over the budget, because the military security complex's budget is massive. It's about $1,000 billion annually. That type of budget requires an enemy, and Russia has been designated that enemy. But when Trump said he would normalize relations, then the enemy disappears. And so the CIA and the Pentagon, the military in general, very much opposed to these normalized relations. So they have chosen a way to block them, and that is the demonization of Russia and its president, but also accusations that Trump owes his election to his collusion with Putin in hacking the election. And that type of charge makes it difficult for Trump to normalize with relations with Russia, because if he does, it's taken as confirmation that he is a Russian agent or a Putin stooge. So I think it's not likely that we will see improved relations. And these sanctions are just another propaganda measure to make the American people, the European people, think once again that Russia's doing something wrong and again has had to be punished. So I don't think the sanctions have any effect on the Russian firms. As I understand it, they're mainly military firms and would not be selling anything to the United States anyhow. The Russians, I think, pay too much attention to these sanctions. They really should be grateful for them, because it forces them into independence, which they need. They don't need to be all tied down in Western relationships, because it makes it easier for the United States to control them, to influence them. So I think on the whole, it's just another propaganda thing. Probably Russia shouldn't even pay any attention to it. Or if they want to do something, my understanding is that the Americans are dependent on Russian rockets in order to put their satellites into space. For the past number of years, the Russians have been providing the means by which the United States can put the satellites in space to spy on Russia, to target Russia with nuclear weapons. Maybe Russia should say they're putting sanctions on the United States and won't sell them any more rockets. Or maybe it's too late. Maybe by now the Americans have found a way to manufacture their own rockets. But I would just simply say Russia should focus on its relationships with the East, with China, with India, the Silk Road, the Eurasian trade arrangements and go about its business and stop being so sensitive to Western approval. What does Western approval matter anyhow? I mean, you were talking about a decadent civilization that has bombed 9 countries in the last 15 years. What kind of approval can that be? What does that approval mean to anyone? So the Russians really should just go about reorganizing the world in a way that works for them and China and the rest of Asia.
Paul, many thanks for speaking to us. Great to get your insights there. My guest is Graig Robers, the former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury.